But I have to say that a one-page memo doesn't give me a huge amount of confidence that there is a lot of detail that's already been agreed, given that the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which led to the Iran nuclear deal in 2015, was 150 pages long. So there's hugely technical issues when you start talking about the nuclear issue way beyond the Straits of Hormuz.
President Trump has said there is a very good chance of the Iran war ending after he offered Tehran a number of concessions, but he's also threatened to resume bombing Iran if no agreement is reached at a much higher level and intensity than before. A leaked memo of the outline deal suggests a moratorium on Iran's nuclear enrichment program, with US diplomats pushing for 12 to 15 years, while Iran wants just 5. After an agreed time, Iran could be allowed to resume some enrichment, but only to 3.67%, as under the deal previously negotiated by Barack Obama. President Trump's been speaking once again at the White House tonight.
If we left right now Iran, it would take them 20 years to rebuild. You would call that, we're in good shape, right?
Fantastic shape.
We're in good shape. And now we're doing well. Now we have to get what we have to get. If we don't do that, we'll have to go a big step further. But with that being said, they want to make a deal. We've had very good talks over the last 24 hours, and it's very possible that we'll make a deal.
Well, as the president was speaking, US Central Command posted on X that a US jet had fired on an Iranian-flagged vessel to stop it reaching port as the US enforces its blockade. Meanwhile, Iran has dismissed a proposed US Security Council resolution on reopening the Strait of Hormuz as incomplete and politically motivated. Well, let's talk to Sir Mark Lyall-Grant, former National Security Advisor. Good evening to you, Sir Mark.
Good evening, Carol.
Great to have you with us. As ever, some somewhat conflicting signals about what is going on. Perhaps the most positive note is that we've had the president there talking out about some very positive talks over the last 24 hours, and there does appear to be some form of an outline deal, which we've seen a leak of part of, that is being discussed.
Yes, I mean, it's difficult to keep up with the sort of twists and turns we've seen over the last 48 hours, Carol, but there is some potential good news here, in the sense that both sides clearly do not want to return to hostilities, and President Trump in particular is keen to do a deal, and that's really why he's paused the so-called Project Freedom, where it was using more sort of muscular military force to open the Straits of Hormuz. And there clearly is some back channel exchanges, indirect contact between the two countries via Pakistan. So I think there is a reasonable chance that the sort of ceasefire at least will be extended, and that there will be some more serious negotiations between the two countries. But I have to say, as you were hinting in your introduction, there remains a huge gap between the parties, and there is still sort of fighting going on, with Iran firing on neutral ships, and the Americans today firing on an Iranian ship. So I think we're a long way from the end of this conflict, but there is a sort of glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, perhaps.
The Times is reporting tonight that under the terms of a one-page memo that's been drawn up, the exact peace deal between the US and Iran would be negotiated during a 30-day ceasefire, with talks taking place in either Geneva or Islamabad. During this, the US would gradually lift its naval blockade, and Tehran would reopen the Strait of Hormuz to commercial shipping. I mean, even before you then get to the details of the next phase, just agreeing that process of reopening the Strait of Hormuz looks pretty fraught with difficulties, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But I think the Straits of Hormuz and the opening of it is now sort of taken up center stage in this conflict, whereas at the beginning, of course, it was all about Iran's nuclear potential. But seeing the damage that's being done to the global economy by this strangulation of the Strait of Hormuz, that I think is the number one priority for the Americans. So they're now prepared to accept that there will be some delay before there is an eventual deal on the nuclear issue. In that interim period, 30 days, as you mentioned, is a possibility. The Straits of Hormuz will be opened and some ships will be able to go in both directions. But I have to say that a one-page memo doesn't give me a huge amount of confidence that there is a lot of detail that's already been agreed, given that the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which led to the Iran nuclear deal in 2015, was 150 pages long. So there's hugely technical issues when you start talking about the nuclear issue way beyond the Straits of Hormuz.
Yeah, and on that nuclear issue, what we're seeing, if this leak of the memo is correct, it looks as though there would be this moratorium. There's still a dispute about how long this would last on Iran's nuclear program. And then after this, Iran could be allowed to enrich uranium to 3.67%. That, of course, is way below any level that you would need for any nuclear weapons. And in return, see the easing of some sanctions. Now, that sounds, doesn't it, remarkably similar to that JCPOA deal, that deal negotiated under Barack Obama, which President Trump was so rude about and walked away from.
Yes, it actually sounds rather weaker than the deal that was done in 2015 under Barack Obama. So it's going to be difficult for President Trump to present this as a great victory for all the effort and money and resource and military power that's gone into the conflict over the last couple of months. But the first issue of nuclear is actually what to do about the enriched uranium that is buried somewhere underneath rubble in one of the military sites in Iran. Then you have the question of the future enrichment potential of Iran. You've got the whole question of inspections of the different sites. You've got the question of the whole missile technology and the drone technology that Iran has. And then you have Iran's malign influence through proxies in the region. Now, all those issues President Trump has said need to be covered in the deal. And that is going to take many, many days, if not weeks and months, to actually work through by both sides.
And we've heard very little from the Iranian side. We've got an Iranian MP, Ibrahim Rezai, quoted in the Times saying the deal's an American wish list. And Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who of course is one of the key negotiators on the Iranian side, saying that America is seeking Tehran's surrender through a naval blockade, economic pressure and media manipulation. I mean, it's not exactly very positive signals, is it?
It isn't. And I think when there has been discussion between the two sides in the past, that has been upset often by a sort of midnight tweet from President Trump or some comment to the press. I think we're seeing from the White House, though, this week a little bit more careful wording and a little bit more caution by President Trump in what he says about the Iranians. So we're not really he's not talking so much about surrender of Iran. He knows that that isn't a realistic objective. He's not talking about regime change, of course, which he was a couple of months ago. So I think he recognizes that he needs to just tone down the rhetoric a little bit for a few days in order to get this sort of putative outline of a deal across the line and get the Straits of Hormuz open, which is now his number one priority.
Sir Mark Lisle-Grant, former National Security Advisor. Really great to have your insight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Cal.